Everything was going according to plan. Had been accepted for grad school with a partial assistantship at The Ohio State University in 2004. My plan was to become a professor, come home to Yemen to teach. Before I left for the US, I get engaged, and in July 2006, I returned to Yemen for our wedding. 3 day celebration in our city with over 250 guests. We settled in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, while I was working towards my PhD. My daughter was born 2007. My son was born a year and a half later. As part of my work and PhD in robotics, I worked with children with autism, and I began to notice possibly autistic behavior in our son. He was around 3 years old. When we had him tested, he was diagnosed as autistic. Muhammad's diagnosis changed our plan. Now we knew that we needed to stay in the US so he can get the support he needs. So, have to find a job at a US company that will sponsor me for an H1 visa. The visa that will allow me to stay and work in the US. I found a job at Intel, and we moved to Beaverton, Oregon in August 2013. Now, I focused all my energy towards the new future that we have planned. The US has given me top education, and I wanted to pay that investment back. I wanted to put my knowledge to work and make our company, Intel, and our new country, the US, the first in class, number one in the world. Faiza was in first grade. Muhammad was in kindergarten. Although Muhammad was doing well in Ohio in a special needs classroom, the Oregon school system was different. Here, he was diagnosed as not autistic, but just hyperactive. So, they placed him in a regular kindergarten room, not in a special needs room. One day, few weeks after the school started, I get a call at work. I heard the principal frankly saying, "My son was missing." My wife and me rushed to the school. We searched everywhere, the closet, playground, the busy street outside. It was a nightmare. Nightmare for all of us, for the school principal and teachers, for my wife and for me. Finally, we found Muhammad hiding in a bathroom stall. Terrified in the new place, he ran out of the classroom into the restroom to hide from the scary people coming at him. He found a way to hide there by climbing up on the toilet so his feet wouldn't show. Smart. He stayed there, silent but afraid, and not knowing what else to do. When we found him at last, we knew that we have to find a different place where he would feel safe. At that moment, I was more certain than ever that we had to stay in the US for Muhammad's sake. We did manage to have him in a better school situations. And the next winter, I decided to go to Yemen. I had been away for 6 years. I bought a return ticket, planning to come back in January 2015, 3 weeks of vacation. Civil war had already started in Yemen in 2014, but my city, Sana'a, was calm when I arrived on January 1st. For Yemenis with H1 visa, every time you travel outside the US, you have to apply for an H1 re-entry visa, again stamped on your passport. So I had an appointment on January 5 at the US Embassy in Sana'a to get the visa. My interview went smoothly. In fact, the embassy official congratulated me for getting a job in the US and being eligible for H1 visa. and I paid the $160 fees, a sign of approval. But 2 weeks later, when I check my phone to see my status, it was still AP, under administrative processing. In early February, so I had to cancel my return flight in January 20, right? Early February, I still didn't have a visa. So I have to call my manager at Intel, explaining my situation. And we both agreed to place me in leave without pay, because I have used all my vacation time. Yes, I was aware. I was aware that I did not have a long employment history with them. They could easily replace me. Yet, the only way for me and my family to remain in the US is for me to get that job at Intel, to get that re-entry visa. I did not tell my wife. I did not tell her that I'm in leave without pay. She had enough to worry about. Running a household in a foreign country with 2 small kids, one of them with special needs. So I just told her to use my credit card to pay for everything she needed. For me, I started borrowing money from a couple of friends to keep my card paid off. Then, the evening of February 17, a friend of mine told me a shocking news. Ghassan, they closed the US embassy, he said, and they burned all the documents. What? I could not believe such a thing could happen. All my official papers, my passport, my H-1 letter was inside that embassy. I could not believe the US would destroy them. The first thing, the next morning, I went to the embassy. The door was locked. There was no one to answer my questions. 3 weeks later, the embassy did email me confirming that they had destroyed all my documents, including my passport. I emailed them back, why? Why did they not contact me first, or at least send my documents to my US address instead of destroying them? The answer was, this is an emergency. No questions asked. Finally, in March, I get a new passport. And I flew to Malaysia to reapply again for the H-1 visa at the embassy there. I went there hoping that I could work at the Intel branch in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, while I was waiting for my visa before work from home. But that was not allowed. So I returned to Yemen. I did not know what to do. All I wanted was to be reunited with my family. I prayed to Allah, God, to show me the right path, and I waited. I would check my phone every hour, to see if my visa status has changed. Nothing ever happened on weekends, so I did it Saturday and Sundays. But in other days, I would check my status and my phone every single hour, day and night. It was always still AP, under administrative processing. I decided to mail my passport to a friend living in Malaysia, so that if my visa was ready, he could get my passport quickly to the embassy to get their entry visa. The very next day, after I put my passport in the mail, they started bombing the airport in Sana'a. The plane with my passport never left for Malaysia. My friend never received it. my passport was lost again. One month later, the airport called. They were saying there were some personal documents had been found, and there were no guarantees. But if I wanted to come and check, I could try to find my passport. When I went there, I saw a room full of people and piles of papers spilling out of bags, stacked on the floor. Like me, everyone was frantic to find their documents. And I spent hours searching through them one by one. Finally, and luckily, I did find my passport. Then, full year passed without any change in my visa status. It was still AP, under administrative processing. In May 2016, I went to Amman, Jordan, to meet two FBI agents. They explained to me why my case is taking so long. The FBI has to get clearances from over a dozen of agencies before they pass on a visa request. And apparently, just one of those agencies had refused in my case. They were still working on it. But by that time, it had been 15 months that I had been without pay, supporting a family overseas through loans from friends. In November 2016, during the presidential election campaigns, many negative statements regarding foreigners, especially Muslims, were distributed. Around that time, my wife was officially informed. Sorry, we have tried everything. We cannot find a way to bring Ghassan back to the US. You have to find, or you make life in a different country. When I heard that, I knew there's nothing I could do. So I started preparing myself to stay in Yemen and accepted a teaching job there while keeping my family in the US. Even though I have given up hope, but I was still doing my hourly check on my phone, probably out of habit. But at 9 a.m. on December 2016, December 7, 2016, I saw a new update. Nothing. I contacted the embassy in Malaysia, and they said my case had cleared. Whew. Cleared. Only later did I find out my case had been resolved through a last-minute intervention from a Muslim advisor to the Obama. I immediately flew to Malaysia. And in January 2nd, 2017, 2 years, I got the visa to travel to the US. But policies towards Muslims around that time were changing by the hour. Even though I have all my documents and paper in order, in some arrival sites, the official might still refuse me entrance. So we decided to go with San Francisco, because that was supposed to be the easiest, safest place to enter the US, right? When I arrived there, The custom official grilled me for over 4 hours. Finally, he handed me the passport, say, hopefully you will not get into this situation again. It was anticlimax, but I was far past caring about anything but getting home. It was January 7, 2017, more than 2 years since I have left. When I walked in the door of our home, my kids stared. They hardly knew me. They hardly knew their father. My daughter was 7 when I left. She was 9 as a girl, thinking what to wear to the school. My son was 5, now at 7. He hardly remember how he and I used to play together and wrestle on the floor. I was in a daze, not even happy, just exhausted. A couple of days later, I went back to work and I paid the tens of thousands of dollars I owed to friends who have helped me out. But other things were not so easy to fix. Those 2 years of living in limbo left scars, deep scars, in each of us. My wife had faced life as a single parent in a foreign country. My kids were growing up without me. There is no way. There is no way to get those precious years back.